Perfect. She'll need this at home.
These words burst out of my son-in-law when he lifted a maid's uniform, a blue dress with a white apron, that his mother had just given to my daughter Emily as a wedding gift. I saw my girl's eyes fill with tears. There are moments when time seems to freeze. When you stand in the middle of a celebration surrounded by guests, music and laughter, and everything inside you collapses. That was exactly what I felt on my daughter's wedding day. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. And it should have been. Emily glowed in her white lace dress, her dark hair styled into an elegant updo, her eyes shining with joy. She danced with Ryan, her newlywed husband, and the entire hall watched them with admiration. I stood aside thinking, here she is, my girl, the one I raised alone, the one I gave everything to. Here she is starting her new life. The reception was luxurious. Ryan's parents spared no expense. The enormous banquet hall was decorated with fresh flowers, expensive champagne sparkled on the tables, and an orchestra played live music. Everything shimmered and glowed. I felt a bit out of place among all that opulence. My simple beige dress clearly lost against the outfits of the other guests. But I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was my daughter's happiness. Ryan's mother, Patricia, was an imposing woman. Tall, wearing a deep burgundy designer suit, with flawless hair and a manicure that probably cost as much as my monthly salary. She carried herself as if the whole world owed her reverence. From the very first meeting she looked down on me. I'm a regular accountant, living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, not wearing brand-name clothes. To Patricia, I must have seemed too simple, unworthy of being the mother of her precious son's bride. But I stayed silent. For Emily. For her happiness. My daughter loved Ryan and I didn't want to darken her day. Then came the moment of congratulations and gifts. Guests approached the newlyweds one by one, offering warm words, handing envelopes and wrapped boxes. Everything was going smoothly. Emily smiled, Ryan held her by the shoulders, thanking everyone. It seemed nothing could ruin this day. And then Patricia stood up. She took the microphone and the hall fell silent. Everyone waited to hear what the groom's mother would say. Patricia smiled, that same smile that always made my stomach twist. Too wide. Too confident. Too fake. Dear guests, she began in her ringing voice. I want to congratulate the newlyweds and say a few words. Today my son married a wonderful young woman. Emily, we are happy to welcome you into our family. He paused and I felt it. Something was wrong. A mother's intuition rarely fails. My stomach tightened. And of course, Patricia continued, pulling a large shiny gift box from under the table, I want to give my daughter-in-law a very special present. Emily lit up. Guests applauded. I saw how happy she was. She had always wanted to win her mother-in-law's approval. I clenched my hands. Something inside me screamed, run. Stop this. But I stood frozen. With a theatrical gesture, Patricia handed the box to Emily. My daughter accepted it with a grateful smile and began to unwrap it. The hall waited in silence. But before I continue, tell me which city you're watching from. It's important for us to know how far our stories travel. Emily opened the box. And her face. God, her face. Her smile faded as if someone had turned off the light. She lifted out a uniform. A blue maid's uniform with a white apron. With Emily stitched on the chest. The hall gasped. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. Someone stared in confusion. And I stood, unable to move, watching my daughter's face flush with shame. Here you go, dear, Patricia said loudly, making sure everyone heard. You'll need this. In our family, women know how to run a household. I think this is a perfect start for you. Emily held the uniform in trembling hands and said nothing. Her lips quivered. I saw her fighting with everything she had not to cry. And then Ryan snatched the uniform from her hands, lifted it high for everyone to see, and burst out laughing. Perfect. She'll need it at home. His laugh cut through the room, loud, pleased, careless. He laughed at his own wife. At my daughter. On their wedding day. Patricia joined in her son's laughter, pleased with the effect. A few of their friends laughed along, supporting the hostess of the celebration. Some guests lowered their eyes. Some pulled out their phones, pretending to check messages. Others simply looked on with pity. And then I saw the tears. One tear rolled down Emily's cheek. Then another. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My girl was crying on her wedding day, humiliated in front of 100 people. And her husband, the man who had promised just an hour earlier to love and protect her, stood there laughing. I felt something rise inside me. Not anger. Not hurt. Something far stronger. Fury. Cold, controlled fury. And resolve. I looked at crying Emily. Then at triumphant Patricia. Then at laughing Ryan. And I understood, it's now or never. Now I had to show these people who truly had worth. Now I had to protect my daughter. I rose from my seat and walked toward the newlyweds table. My heels clicked against the floor. Guests stepped aside watching me. Patricia turned toward me, triumph flashing in her eyes. She thought she had won. She didn't yet know what I had prepared. I walked up to Emily, gently wrapped my arm around her shoulders and whispered in her ear. Don't cry, sweetheart. Everything will be all right. I promise. Then I turned to the hall and said loudly, I have a gift for the newlyweds as well. And I think it's the perfect time to give it. I took a large white envelope with a notary seal out of my bag. Thick, heavy. Inside it was my entire life from the past few years. All my sacrifices. All my hopes. Emily, this is for you, I said, handing the envelope to my daughter. For Mom. With love. My daughter took it with trembling hands, wiping her tears. Her eyes were full of questions. Ryan stopped laughing. Patricia frowned, clearly not understanding what was happening. Open it, I said. And you know what? What happened next turned this whole wedding upside down. But I'll tell you that in a moment. For now, let me say this. By the end of this story, you'll understand how one mother's gift saved her daughter from a nightmare, what happened to the laughing Ryan, and why sometimes real love is not romance, but documents with a seal. Stay with me because the most shocking part is still ahead. Emily opened the envelope. Her hands still trembled, her tears still wet on her cheeks. She pulled out several sheets of paper with seals, started reading, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Mom, what is this? She whispered. House documents, sweetheart, I said calmly but loudly enough for everyone to hear. Your house. Fully registered in your name. 3 rooms, a garden, a small fountain in the yard. All yours. The hall froze. Complete silence. Even the music stopped. Guests stared at us. Patricia turned pale, then red as if slapped. What? She screamed. What house? You can't afford that. I turned to her and smiled. Confident. I can, Patricia. And I did. Everything is legal. Everything protected by a notarized agreement. The house belongs only to Emily. No one else has any rights. No one. I emphasized that last word, looking straight at Ryan. He stood there with his mouth open, not understanding what was happening. How? No one, he muttered. I'm her husband. The prenuptial agreement was never signed, I said. The house was bought before the wedding and registered solely to Emily. By law, it is her personal property. The notary will confirm everything. Emily looked at the documents, then at me, and her eyes filled with so many emotions. Disbelief. Gratitude. She threw her arms around my neck and burst into a different kind of tears. Tears of relief. Mom, where did you? She sobbed. Later, honey, later, I whispered, holding her. The important thing is that you now have your own place. Yours. And then a loud voice rose. Ryan's father, Edward, stood up. A tall, gray-haired man with a tired face. He walked toward us and I prepared for the worst. But he did something no one expected. Edward looked at me with respect and said loudly, addressing the whole hall. Margaret did the right thing. She protected her daughter. I admire her wisdom and foresight. Patricia jumped from her seat. Edward, what are you talking about? Whose side are you on? But he ignored her. He kept looking at me and there was a kind of sorrow in his eyes. I didn't protect my daughter Grace the same way, he said quietly, yet everyone heard. And she was left with nothing when she left her husband. If only I had been as forward-thinking back then. He fell silent, shaking his head. Patricia turned white with rage. She grabbed a glass from the table and hurled it to the floor. Crystal shattered everywhere. "You're all conspiring against me," she screamed. "Against my son. This is betrayal. Manipulation." Guests panicked. Some got up, preparing to leave. Some pulled out their phones, recording everything. Some just stared with their mouths open. Ryan grabbed Emily's hand. "Give me those documents. We'll sell that house and buy a proper place." But Emily pulled her hand away. For the first time that evening, there was firmness in her eyes. "No," she said quietly but clearly. "It's my house. My mother's gift. You're against me now?" Ryan raised his voice. "I'm your husband. We're a family. Everything should be shared." "Is the maid's uniform shared too?" I asked sharply. "Or is that only for Emily?" Patricia lunged at me, jabbing her finger into my chest. "You ruined everything. This was a perfect wedding. You want to turn them against each other from day one." "No, Patricia," I answered calmly. "You ruined this wedding with your gift. I simply gave my daughter something that gives her freedom. Safety." Edward placed a hand on his wife's shoulder. "That's enough, Patricia. We're going home. You embarrassed yourself." She pushed his hand away, turned around, and rushed out of the hall. Ryan hesitated between us and the door his mother had disappeared through. In the end, he ran after her too, leaving Emily standing alone. On her wedding day. On the most important day of her life. He chose his mother. Guests began to leave. Some came up to Emily, lightly squeezed her hand, whispered congratulations. Some slipped away quietly, not knowing what to say. The buffet was falling apart. Musicians packed their instruments. Waiters cleared the tables. Edward approached us last. He hugged Emily and said softly, "I'm sorry for my son. And for my wife. You deserve better." Then he looked at me and nodded with respect. "You are a strong woman, Margaret. A wise mother." He left, and Emily and I remained alone in the empty hall. She leaned against me, holding the house documents in her hands. Her white dress was wrinkled, her makeup smeared with tears, but she was whole. She was free. "Why did you do this, Mom?" she whispered. "Where did you get that kind of money?" I stroked her hair and smiled. "It's a long story, sweetheart. A very long one. And it began many years ago when I saw what happened to your Aunt Danielle. You know, sometimes life teaches us lessons through someone else's pain. My lesson was the story of my younger sister Danielle. Beautiful, kind, naive Danny. It happened 20 years ago. Danielle was 25 when she married Richard. A wealthy, successful businessman. He was 15 years older, owned several stores, drove an expensive car. Danny was head over heels in love. She thought she had won the lottery of life. The wedding was luxurious. Richard spared no expense. He gave Danny a fur coat, gold earrings, promised a life of comfort. And indeed the first years were good. They lived in a large house. Danny didn't work, raised 2 children, ran the household. Richard provided for the family. But there was one problem. The house was in Richard's name. The cars in Richard's name. The bank accounts in Richard's name. The business in Richard's name. Danny had nothing of her own. Absolutely nothing. "Why do you need that?" Richard would say when she timidly asked about joint property. "We're a family. Everything is ours. Don't you trust me?" And Danny stayed silent. He trusted him. He loved him. She didn't think anything bad could happen. But then the problems began. Richard started staying late at work. Came home smelling of someone else's perfume. Danny tried to talk, but he brushed her off, got irritated, yelled. Then the accusations began. That she gained weight. That the house was a mess. That the children were misbehaved. That she was useless. Danny endured it. For the children. For the family. For the beautiful house and the illusion of stability. But one day she found a message on his phone. From another woman. Young. With photos. Promises. Plans for the future. Danny packed her things and said she was leaving. Taking the children. And that's when Richard showed his true face. "Leave," he said coldly. "But the house is mine. The car is mine. The money is mine. You get nothing. What do you mean nothing? Danny shouted. I raised your children for 15 years. I ran your home. Cooked, cleaned, washed. I gave up my career for you. So what? He smirked. Prove it in court. You have no money for a lawyer. And I have the best attorneys in the city. If you want to fight, go ahead. But the kids stay here. In a good home. With a father who can provide for them. Not with a broke mother. Danielle left that day with one bag of clothes. No money. No home. No job. 2 children in her arms. She moved into my 1-bedroom apartment. The 4 of us slept on the floor. She cried at night so hard I could hear through the thin wall. She had to get a job as a store clerk. Rent a tiny room in a shared apartment. Enroll the kids in a regular public school instead of the prestigious academy they used to attend. Count every penny to survive. And Richard? He married that same young woman. Brought her into the same house where Danny had lived. Gave her the same car he used to drive my sister in. I watched Danielle break. Fade. Turn from a beautiful, confident woman into a tired, battered shadow. And I swore that would never happen to my daughter. Never. When Emily started dating Ryan, I felt something was wrong immediately. He was a good guy, but far too dependent on his parents. Too used to luxury. Too spoiled. And his mother, Patricia, she looked at Emily like she was the help from the very first meeting. 6 months before the wedding, Emily told me how Patricia was teaching her the proper way to cook a pot roast. How she criticized her clothes. How she hinted that Emily wasn't good enough for their family. How Ryan agreed with his mother instead of defending his fiancée. And I understood I needed to act. Right then. Before it was too late. I sold all my jewelry. The gold earrings my mother gave me. The chain I'd worn for 20 years. The ring with a tiny diamond. Everything. Came to about $3,000. Then I sold my car. Old but running. Another $7,000. I took a second job. During the day I worked as an accountant in an office, and in the evenings I freelanced doing reports for small companies. I slept 4 hours a night. Didn't buy new clothes. Didn't go to cafes. Didn't spend a single dollar on entertainment. I saved every spare dollar. Found it. Saved. Searched for options. And after 2 years I finally found it. A small house on the edge of the city. 3 rooms, a tiny garden, an old fountain in the yard that could be repaired. It needed work, but it was solid. And most importantly, it cost exactly what I had managed to save. I bought it. Registered it in Emily's name. Went to a notary and secured a special protection clause. A husband has no right to this property under any circumstances. It is Emily's personal asset, purchased before marriage with her mother's money. I didn't tell my daughter anything. It was my secret. My shield. My contingency plan for her in case things went wrong. And you know what? Things did go wrong. Already on the wedding day. When Patricia handed Emily that cursed maid's uniform, I understood. I had been right. My fears were real. These people didn't respect my daughter. They wanted to break her, control her, turn her into a servant. But Emily had a house now. Her house. A place she could go anytime. A place where she could be free. And that house saved her life. But I'll tell you more about that later. After the wedding, Emily still went on the honeymoon trip with Ryan. I was against it. Every cell of my body screamed, "Don't let her go." But she begged me to give them a chance. "Mom, it's just stress," she said while packing her suitcase. Ryan apologized. He said his mom provoked him, that he didn't mean to hurt me. "We're flying to Italy, we'll spend 2 weeks together, everything will get better." I looked into her hopeful eyes and kept quiet. What could I say? He had just gotten married. He loved him. He wanted to believe. But on the 3rd day of the honeymoon, Emily called me. Her voice was strange. Quiet. Tense. "Mom, can I just talk to you?" she asked. "Of course, sweetheart." "What happened?" She went silent. I heard the sound of waves in the background, seagulls screaming. Then she sighed deeply. "Ryan barely talks to me. He hasn't said a word since the plane. We got to the hotel, he didn't even look at the sunset, even though I was so excited about it. He just went to sleep. In the morning he got up, ate breakfast without a word, and went to the beach alone. I asked if we could go together and he said, I need to think. My heart tightened. Think about what? I don't know, Mom. You won't tell me. He just walks around gloomy looking at me like I did something terrible. You didn't do anything wrong, Emily. Remember that. Then why is he acting like this? It's our honeymoon. We're supposed to be happy. I wanted to tell her the truth. That he was offended because of the house. That his ego was wounded. That he was used to controlling everything, and now his mother had been humiliated and I had given my daughter independence. But I stayed silent. For the moment. On the 5th day Ryan finally spoke. Emily called that evening, and I could hear fear in her voice the moment she said, Mom. Mom, he said your gift is manipulation. What? Yes. He says you bought the house on purpose to turn us against each other. So I wouldn't trust him. So you would poison me against his family. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. And what did you say? I said that's not true. That you only wanted to help. But he doesn't listen. He says that in a normal family everything is shared. That if I don't trust him it means I don't truly love him. Emily, listen to me carefully. He wants me to sell the house, she interrupted, her voice shaking. He said we'll put the money into a joint account and buy an apartment in a prestigious neighborhood, close to his parents, so they can help us. And that this house, he says it's in the suburbs, that it's inconvenient, that his friends will laugh if they find out where we live. I closed my eyes. It had begun. And what did you tell him? I told him I needed time to think. And he got angry. Started yelling that I'm ungrateful, that his family is trying for me and I'm spitting in their faces. That his mother was just making a joke with the uniform and I took it too seriously. A joke. I couldn't believe my ears. Emily, that was humiliation. Public humiliation. I know, Mom, I know, she whispered. But he says that's how humor works in their family. That I need to get used to it. That I'm too sensitive. This was pure manipulation. When someone convinces you that your reactions are wrong, that your feelings are the problem. I'd read about this. I'd seen it with Danielle and Richard. Sweetheart, do not sell the house, I said firmly. Not under any circumstances. It's your safety net. Your freedom. But Mom, he's my husband. We're supposed to trust each other. Trust is not measured by money or property, Emily. If he truly loves you, he doesn't need your house. She went silent. Then she said quietly, he told me that if I refuse, it means our marriage starts with a lie. That he doesn't know if he can live with a woman who doesn't trust him. And that living in a house bought by your mother is humiliating for a man. That's manipulation, Emily. Mom, I don't want to ruin our marriage in the first week. I love him. I heard the tears in her voice. The desperation. She was torn between her husband and common sense. Listen to me, sweetheart. If he loves you, he'll accept your decision. And if he doesn't, then you'll have somewhere to go back to. The other end of the line went quiet. Only the sound of waves. Then Emily whispered, Mom, I'm scared. For the first time in my life, I'm scared of him. And that confession cut through me like a knife. My daughter was afraid of her own husband. On her honeymoon. 1 week after the wedding. Remember the house, I said. It's yours. Always yours. No matter what happens. Okay, Mom, she whispered and hung up. After we said goodbye, I sat there for a long time, the phone still in my hand. I stared out the window and thought, it has begun. The slow, methodical destruction of my daughter's personality. Just like with Danielle. Just like with thousands of other women who believe love will fix everything. But I gave Emily a house. Her own house. And that house was her way out. For when she would be ready to use it. Emily returned from the honeymoon thinner and quiet. When I hugged her at the airport, I felt her ribs through the thin sweater. Did you eat it all? I asked, pulling back to look at her face. I ate, Mom. Just worried a lot. But her eyes didn't lie. There was something dimmed in them. Something broken. Ryan stood by the luggage, staring at his phone, pretending not to hear our conversation. He didn't even say hello. Just nodded and loaded the bags into the car. We're going to the house, Emily said softly. To settle in. All right, sweetheart. I'll stop by in a couple of days, bring some groceries, help you clean. No, Mom. We'll manage. Ryan was already in the driver's seat, honking. Emily kissed me on the cheek quickly and ran to the car. I watched them drive away, feeling the cold spread inside me. A week passed. Emily didn't call. I called her, she answered briefly. Everything's fine, Mom, we're just settling in. Doing renovations. Another week later, I couldn't stand it anymore and went myself. The house looked exactly as when I bought it. No renovations whatsoever. I rang the doorbell. Emily opened it. I gasped. She wore an old house dress, her hair tied in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes. Mom, she faltered. You didn't warn me. Do I have to warn you to see my own daughter? She lowered her eyes. No, of course not. Come in. I stepped inside. The living room was a mess. Ryan's things scattered on the couch, empty beer bottles on the table, an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts. Emily, what is this? Ryan had friends over yesterday. I didn't have time to clean. And he can't clean up after himself? She didn't answer. She just started collecting the bottles. Where is Ryan? He went to his parents. He said he needs time to think about our future. My blood started boiling. Think? About what? Emily sat on the couch and burst into tears. He says he can't live in this house. That it humiliates his masculinity. That all his friends live in modern apartments downtown and he's here in a house bought by my mother. He says his friends laugh at him. That's his problem, Emily, not yours. But he's my husband. I have to think about his feelings. And does he think about yours? She went silent. And at that moment the door burst open. Patricia walked straight in. She didn't even knock. Ryan has a key, Emily explained when she saw my shocked face. And he gave one to his mom. Patricia gave me a cold look. Margaret. What a surprise. Visiting my daughter. Do you always barge in without warning? I'm not barging in. I'm helping Emily get settled. Someone has to teach her how to run a household. She walked into the kitchen and started opening cabinets. Emily, where are the pots? I told you to buy new ones. These are old. I just didn't get to it yet, Patricia. Didn't get to it? You've been living here for a week. Dust on the shelves, dirty floors. Emily, in our family women know how to keep a house clean. I stood up. Patricia, maybe you could let the newlyweds settle in on their own? She turned to me with a contemptuous smile. Or maybe you could stop interfering in your daughter's life. She's married now. We're her family. We'll teach her the right things. You already taught her humiliation at the wedding. Patricia's face twisted. Get out of this house. This is my daughter's house. I'll leave when she asks me to. We stood there staring at each other like two animals before a fight. Emily rushed between us, tears on her face. Please don't argue. Mom, maybe you could come another time? I need to talk to Patricia about the weekly menu. I looked at my daughter and saw the plea in her eyes. She was afraid of a scandal. Afraid to worsen things with her mother-in-law. All right, I said. But call me tonight. You must. She nodded. I left, clenching my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. 3 more weeks passed. We barely talked. Emily replied to messages with one-word answers. She picked up the phone only when Ryan wasn't around. One day she finally came to me. She sat in my kitchen, clutching a cup of tea with trembling hands. Mom, Ryan forbade me from seeing Laura. What? He says she's divorced and a bad influence. Says she's teaching me not to respect my husband. I saw her message asking how I was and Ryan took my phone, read it and said she's turning me against him. He reads your messages? Emily blushed. He says spouses shouldn't have secrets. That if I have nothing to hide I shouldn't mind. That it's normal. No, Emily. It's not normal. And he says I dress too brightly. That I attract men's attention. Yesterday we were walking, a man looked at me and Ryan yelled all evening that it was my fault. That I put on tight jeans on purpose. Emily. I threw those jeans away, Mom. And a few other things. Now I only wear what Ryan approves. I looked at my daughter and didn't recognize her. My bright, cheerful, confident girl was becoming a frightened, silenced shadow. Leave him, I said quietly. Before it's too late. Where, Mom? I'm married. I'm supposed to keep the family together. You have a house. Your house. Live there alone. But that would mean I failed. That I couldn't be a good wife. You're wonderful. The problem isn't you. It's him. She stood up, wiped her tears. I have to go. Ryan called 5 times already, asking where I am. She left. And I stayed there in the kitchen knowing she was sinking. Slowly but surely. And I didn't know how to save her. For months passed since that disastrous wedding. 4 months in which my daughter turned into a shadow of herself. I saw it in her rare calls, in the way she avoided meeting me, always finding excuses not to come. And then one morning she called, and her voice had a strange mix of joy and fear. Mom, I'm pregnant. I froze with a cup of coffee in my hand. Pregnant. My baby was going to have a baby. Under any other circumstances I would have jumped with joy. But now a wave of terror washed over me. A pregnant woman is even more vulnerable. Even more dependent. And Ryan understood that perfectly. We talked for almost an hour. Emily told me about morning sickness, how awful she felt. But between the lines I heard something else. Ryan had already begun a new offensive. Now he had a trump card, the baby. And he used it mercilessly. The house in the suburbs, he said, was completely unsuitable for a newborn. No playground nearby, no good schools, poor infrastructure. Patricia supported her son, visiting every day and pointing out every flaw in the house. She had already found a gynecologist for Emily. The best in the city, as she put it. The one all her friends used. Emily had no choice, of course. And Ryan insisted she quit her job. Stress was harmful for the baby, he claimed. A real mother should think about the child, not her career. A real man provides for his family. All those beautiful phrases sounded noble, but behind them was one thing: complete financial control over Emily. Come to me tomorrow, I told her. In the morning. While Ryan is at work. Emily came the next morning. And what I saw horrified me. My daughter looked exhausted. Thinner, despite being pregnant, with huge dark circles under her eyes. She wore a shapeless gray sweater and baggy pants that made her look even more miserable. Where had that bright, beautiful girl gone? The one who only 6 months earlier laughed and dreamed. I sat her down on the couch, poured her ginger tea for the nausea. Emily sat there, hugging the cup with trembling hands, and talked. Ryan didn't let her sleep at night. Every evening began with the same conversation. About the house. About how selfish she was. About how a good wife should listen to her husband. About how she was destroying their family with her stubbornness. He said that if they sold the house and bought an apartment near his parents, Patricia could help with the baby. That things would be easier for Emily. That it was the only right choice. And if she refused, it meant she was a bad mother who cared only about herself. I listened and felt my insides boil. This was classic manipulation. Using pregnancy, maternal instinct, the desire to give the child the best. All of it against Emily herself. Sweetheart, listen to me carefully, I said, taking her hands in mine. They were ice cold. I've seen this before. With your Aunt Danielle. She gave up everything for her husband. And when she needed to leave, she had nothing. Absolutely nothing. I won't let you repeat her mistake. Emily cried. Quietly, hopelessly. She said she didn't want to be a single mother, that she was afraid of conflict, that she was exhausted from fighting. Ryan pressured her every day, every hour. She felt guilty, wrong, broken. I hugged her and I understood. Time was running out. Ryan sensed that Emily was weakening. He would increase the pressure. He wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. The house. Control. Complete power over her. Promise me, I whispered into her ear. Promise you won't sell the house. No matter what. Emily nodded, clinging to me. But I saw doubt in her eyes. Exhaustion. Weakness. And I knew that promise might not survive Ryan's pressure. When she left, I stood at the window and watched her car until it disappeared around the corner. My chest felt heavy, like a stone was pressing on it. My intuition screamed that something terrible was about to happen. That Ryan would make a decisive move. And I was right. A week later, Emily called me in the middle of the day. Her voice sounded strange, tight, frightened. She spoke in short phrases as if someone could hear her. "Mom, I need your help. Right now." I dropped everything and rushed to the house. The road felt endless. I broke every speed limit, ran yellow lights, weaved between cars. Horrible scenarios raced through my mind. What did he do to her? Did he hit her? She was pregnant. When I burst into the house, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table. Papers lay in front of her. She stared at them with empty eyes while tears streamed down her cheeks. Her hands shook so hard she couldn't hold a glass of water. What happened? I ran to her. Emily lifted her swollen, red eyes. She had been crying for a long time. Maybe hours. Her face was pale, her lips dry and cracked. She silently handed me the papers. I grabbed them and began to read. A preliminary agreement for the sale of the house. Buyer. Amount. Conditions. And at the bottom was a signature. Emily's signature. The ground disappeared from under my feet. "You signed this." Emily covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Loudly, hysterically, like a child. Her shoulders shook. She tried to speak through tears, but I couldn't understand her. I sat beside her, hugged her, stroked her back until she calmed down enough to talk. The story was horrifying. Ryan came home last night with these documents. Said he found the perfect buyer. Someone willing to pay 20% above market price. They could buy a beautiful apartment downtown, renovate it, set up a nursery. His parents would help with the down payment. Emily refused to sign. Then the nightmare began. Ryan yelled at her for 3 hours straight. Said she was destroying their family. That her mother had turned her against him. That she was selfish and only thought about herself, not the baby. That the child would grow up in poverty because of her pride. He didn't let her sleep. Walked around slamming doors, blasted the TV. When Emily curled up on the couch and covered her ears, he came up and continued talking. Again and again. The same things. Over and over. By morning, Emily broke. She was physically and emotionally exhausted. Morning sickness, a sleepless night, constant pressure. It all crushed her resistance. She signed the papers just to make it stop. Ryan snatched the documents and immediately left. Said he was going to the notary to finalize everything before she changed her mind. Only after the door closed did Emily realize what she had done. I sat beside my daughter and felt a rage I had never felt in my life. This man was psychologically torturing a pregnant woman. Depriving her of sleep. Pressuring her. Breaking her. He wasn't a husband, he was a tyrant. "Get dressed," I said firmly. "Right now. We're going to a lawyer." I knew someone. Andrew Roberts, an excellent family law specialist, recommended to me years ago. I called him from Emily's house and he agreed to see us immediately. 20 minutes later we were sitting in his office. Andrew was a man in his 50s, with a thoughtful gaze and calm, confident manners. He didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't judge, he simply listened. I told him everything. About the house I bought for Emily. About how I registered it with notary protection. About the wedding. About the 4 months of hell my daughter endured. About the pregnancy. About Ryan's pressure. About the documents she signed under coercion. Andrew studied the documents carefully. Made notes. Compared them with the notarized agreement I had brought. Emily sat beside me, gripping my hand so tightly I could feel every bone in her fingers. Finally, the attorney set the papers aside and looked at us. A faint smile of relief appeared on his face. "I have good news for you." Emily flinched. "This preliminary agreement has no legal force. The house was registered in your name before the marriage, Emily. By law, it is your personal property. Moreover," he pointed to the notarized document, "there is a specific protection clause here. Your husband has no right to this property under any circumstances. To sell the house, your personal presence with your ID at the notary is required. Without you, the transaction is simply impossible." Emily stared at him with wide eyes. I saw hope slowly ignite in them. "So, Ryan can't sell the house?" "Absolutely not. If he tries, it will be fraud. A criminal offense." Document forgery. He could be prosecuted. Andrew explained all the legal details thoroughly. He told her about her rights, about the fact that the house would remain her property even in case of divorce, that any papers signed under pressure hold no legal weight, that the law is on her side. Then he took out his business card and handed it to Emily. Remember the most important thing. What's happening in your marriage is not normal. Isolation from loved ones, constant control, pressure, sleep deprivation, psychological manipulation. These are all signs of abuse. Domestic violence. And the law protects victims of such treatment. The word abuse sounded like a sentence. Emily turned even paler. He had probably never thought of it in those terms. To her, it was just a rough patch in the marriage. If the situation escalates, if you feel in danger, call me immediately, Andrew continued. We can file protective documents, a restraining order if needed. Don't endure this, especially in your condition. We walked out of the office in a kind of daze. Emily was silent the entire ride home. She stared out the window, clutching the lawyer's business card in her hand. I could see the battle inside her. Part of her wanted to believe everything would work out, that Ryan would understand and accept her decision, that they could be happy. But the other part already knew the truth. When we pulled up to the house, Ryan's car was parked out front. Emily tensed immediately. He's home. Do you want me to go with you? I asked. She shook her head. There was a new kind of determination in her eyes. Faint but real. No, Mom. I have to do this myself. I have to tell him. She stepped out of the car and walked toward the house. I watched her straighten her shoulders. Saw her fist tighten around Andrew's business card. The door opened. Ryan stood in the doorway. Even from a distance, I saw the anger on his face. Where have you been? His voice was sharp, demanding. Emily said something. They went inside. The door closed. I sat in the car and prayed. Prayed that Emily would have the strength to stand her ground. That the house would remain her fortress. Because I knew things would only get worse. The conversation with Ryan ended horribly. Emily called me late that night, almost midnight. Her voice, broken, hysterical, told me everything before she even spoke. Mom, he's furious, she whispered. He yelled at me all evening. Says you turned me against him. That you took me to that lawyer on purpose to destroy our marriage. I heard Ryan's voice in the background. Loud, angry, demanding. He clearly knew Emily was talking to me. Tell your mother she's crossing boundaries, he shouted. Tell her she's manipulating you. Emily, are you safe? I asked, gripping the phone. I don't know. He won't leave me alone. Follows me around the house, repeating the same things. That I betrayed him. That I went against him. That a real wife trusts her husband, not lawyers. Ryan yanked the phone from her. I heard his heavy breathing. Margaret, you've crossed every line, he hissed. You poisoned Emily against me. You want to destroy our family. I'm protecting my daughter, I answered firmly. From you. From your control. From your manipulation. Manipulation. You're the manipulator. You bought that damn house to keep Emily on a short leash. To make her depend on you forever. I bought that house so she would have freedom. So she could leave when she finally sees who you really are. He laughed. A cruel, hysterical laugh. Leave? He's pregnant. She's my wife. She's not going anywhere. Emily got the phone back. He was crying. Mom, he says I have to choose. Either I'm completely with him, sell the house, obey him in everything, or he doesn't need me. That if I don't prove my love, he'll leave. He'll leave me pregnant. Alone. Classic blackmail. An ultimatum. Forcing her to choose between him and the rest of the world. Emily, listen to me. This is manipulation. Someone who loves you doesn't give ultimatums. Doesn't blackmail. Doesn't threaten. But I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared of being alone. With a baby. You're not alone. I'm with you. Always. Ryan grabbed the phone again and threw it. The call cut off. I called back 20 times. Emily didn't answer. I was about to drive over, but then a message came. Mom, it's fine. Ryan, calm down. We went to bed. Don't come. I don't want to make it worse. I didn't sleep all night. I sat with the phone in my hands waiting for the next call, the next disaster. And it didn't take long. The phone rang at 6 in the morning. I grabbed it without even looking at the screen. Mom. Emily's voice was barely audible. Panicked. Mom, help. Please. What happened? He locked me in the bedroom. From the outside. I can't get out. My blood froze. What do you mean locked? We argued last night. I said I wouldn't sell the house. He started yelling and I hid in the bedroom. And this morning I woke up and realized the door was locked from the outside. With a key. Ryan left. He left me here. I was already running to the car, the phone wedged between my ear and shoulder. You're alone in the house? Yes. I screamed, banged on the door. No one hears. The neighbors are far. Mom, I'm scared. I'm starting to have contractions. Not real ones, but my stomach hurts. I feel sick. Hold on, sweetheart. I'm coming. 10 minutes. I flew through the empty morning streets like a madwoman. Broke every rule. Ran a red light. Almost hit a cat crossing the road. One thought kept screaming in my head. Faster. Faster. When I reached the house, the first thing I did was try the front door. Locked. I knocked, rang the bell, screamed. Nothing. Ryan had locked the whole house. I pulled out my phone and dialed 102. Emergency services. My daughter is locked inside. She's pregnant. She needs help. Address. I gave it. The dispatcher said the unit would arrive in 15 minutes. A lifetime. I ran around the house looking for a window. All shut. I screamed Emily's name and finally heard her weak voice from a second-floor window. Mom. I'm here. I saw her pale face behind the glass. She was crying, holding her stomach. Hold on, baby. Rescue is coming. The emergency truck arrived in 12 minutes. 2 men in uniform with tools. I explained everything. They asked no unnecessary questions. Just grabbed their equipment and went to the door. The break-in took 3 minutes. The door burst open. I rushed upstairs. The bedroom door was locked from the outside. The key still in the lock. Ryan didn't even bother to remove it. He was sure Emily wouldn't escape. I turned the key. Opened the door. Emily sat on the floor, leaning against the bed. Pale, red-eyed, holding her stomach. Mom. I fell to my knees beside her, hugging her. She was ice cold. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. I'm here. The rescuers checked her condition. Blood pressure high. Pulse rapid. One of them called an ambulance. Said she needed to be seen by a doctor after such stress. Your husband did this? Asked the senior rescuer, a tired-looking man around 40. Emily nodded without lifting her eyes. This is unlawful confinement. You can file a police report. Especially since you're pregnant. That's an aggravating factor. I saw Emily tense up. I don't know. I need to think. There's nothing to think about, I said firmly. You're packing your things now. Essentials. Documents. Clothes. And we are leaving. To my place. Immediately. But Mom. No, but, Emily. He locked you in a room. Pregnant. This is not a marriage. This is a prison. You're leaving with me. Now. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The doctors examined Emily. There was no threat of miscarriage, but they recommended rest and supervision. They offered hospitalization. Emily refused. Said she would go with me. I packed her things. House documents first. Then her passport, medical records, clothes, cosmetics. Everything she might need. I stuffed it all into bags quickly, decisively, without giving myself time to think. Emily sat on the bed staring at me with an empty gaze. She was in shock. She couldn't fully comprehend what had happened. That her own husband had done this to her. When we stepped outside, she turned back. She looked at the rooms, the things, the life she had tried to build here. And she whispered, I'm pregnant. What am I supposed to do now? I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and led her to the car. Live, Emily. Just live. And be free. The door closed behind us. We drove away. And I knew. This was the point of no return. There was no going back. Emily spent 3 days at my place without leaving the room. She lay curled up under a blanket, staring at one spot. Barely ate. Didn't talk. Sometimes cried quietly when she thought I wasn't listening. I understood her state. Betrayal. The collapse of everything she believed about a happy family life. She needed time to process what had happened. To understand that the man she loved was capable of this. On the fourth day I finally convinced her to get up. We had to act. Ryan kept calling non-stop. At first he screamed, demanding that Emily return. Then he begged, promised things would change. Then he switched back to yelling and threats. A classic abuse cycle. Anger, remorse, promises, then anger again. I took Emily's phone and blocked his number. But he started calling from other numbers. Friends, relatives, work phones. The harassment continued. We need professional help, I told Emily over breakfast. I found an attorney. Veronica Marsh. She specializes in cases like this. She'll help us do everything right. Emily nodded numbly. She didn't resist anymore. She just floated along the path I was laying out for her. Veronica Marsh turned out to be a woman in her mid-40s, with a sharp gaze and calm, confident manners. Her office was small but welcoming. Diplomas and client appreciation letters lined the walls. She listened to our story carefully, taking notes. Asked clarifying questions. When Emily described being locked in the room, Veronica frowned. That's a serious offense. Unlawful confinement. Especially considering your pregnancy, she said, looking at Emily. You have every right to file a police report. Open a criminal case. Emily paled. I don't want him to go to jail. I just want him to leave me alone. Veronica nodded in understanding. Then we'll file for a protective order. A restraining measure. Ryan will be forbidden from approaching you within a certain distance, from calling, texting, or coming near your home or workplace. If he violates it, that will give the police grounds to act. And the divorce? Emily asked quietly. We can start the divorce process in parallel. Considering your pregnancy and the circumstances, it can be expedited. You'll need to collect documents confirming your income, assets, and the circumstances of your separation. The next days were filled with legal procedures. Appointments with the notary, gathering documents, signing papers. Veronica handled everything professionally and clearly. She explained every step, calming Emily, who grew more anxious each day. Ryan found out about the divorce a week later. His reaction was predictable. He started calling me. I didn't pick up. Then he showed up at my house. Stood under the windows, yelling, demanding to see Emily. I called the police. They filed a report. The officer spoke with Ryan. He left, but not for long. Next came Patricia. She called me on a Sunday evening. Her voice was overly polite, but I heard barely disguised anger. Margaret, we need to talk. Woman to woman. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Let's meet. At a cafe. Without the kids. Let's discuss the situation. I agreed. I was curious what she had come up with this time. We met the next day. Patricia sat at a table by the window, dressed like she was attending a royal reception. An expensive suit, flawless makeup, a cold smile. Margaret, she began once I sat down, we are both adults. Mothers. We should think about our children's well-being. That's all I ever think about, I answered calmly. Then let's resolve this peacefully. Emily is emotional, pregnant, not thinking clearly. She needs a family. A child needs a father. Ryan is willing to forgive. He's ready to take her back. How generous of him, I said with a hint of sarcasm. Patricia pressed her lips together. Fine. Since you're playing it that way, I'll be honest. We're prepared to offer a compromise. Emily returns to Ryan. We buy them an apartment. 3-bedroom downtown in a new building. Fully registered in Emily's name. She can keep her house on the outskirts. We'll stop asking her to sell it. She'll have 2 properties. Plus we'll pay for the best maternity doctor. A private hospital. Everything she needs. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. They were trying to buy my daughter. As if she were an object. Emily is not for sale, Patricia, I said in an icy tone. Not for 1 apartment. Not for 10. Not for all your money. You're making a mistake, she raised her voice. Emily will be a single mother. Without a husband. Without support. Is that what you want for her? I want her to have freedom. And dignity. Things your family seems not to value. I stood up and walked away without looking back. Behind me I heard Patricia shouting something, but I no longer cared. When I came home, Emily was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of tea. She looked at me questioningly. Patricia tried to buy you, I said plainly. An apartment downtown. A private clinic. All their money. And you? I told her you're not for sale. Emily suddenly smiled. For the first time in 2 weeks. Weakly, but it was still a smile. Thank you, Mom. 2 weeks later, Emily finally said the words I'd been waiting to hear. I'm filing for divorce. For good. Her voice was firm. Confident. For the first time in months, I saw the old Emily in her eyes. Strong. Determined. Veronica Marsh handled the documents quickly. The protective order was activated. Ryan could no longer come near Emily. Several times he tried to violate the restriction, came to my house, waited for her outside the clinic. Each time we called the police. Filed reports. After the third incident, they threatened him with a real sentence. He backed off. Emily's pregnancy was difficult. Stress took its toll. She had to be hospitalized twice for observation. I was with her every day, brought food, books, or simply sat holding her hand. Ryan tried to be present at the birth. He even hired a lawyer who insisted on his rights as a father. But the restraining order was stronger. He wasn't allowed in. Sophie was born in May. Tiny, 7 pounds 1 ounce, with dark hair and huge eyes. When I held her for the first time, I understood. Everything had been worth it. All the fighting. All the pain. All of it, for this little girl. For her future of freedom and dignity. Emily looked at her daughter and cried. From happiness. From relief. From the knowledge that the worst was behind her. The first months were hard. Sleepless nights, colic, exhaustion. But Emily managed. I helped however I could. We lived together in my apartment until Emily regained her strength. Ryan came to see the baby a few times. Each visit was supervised by a psychologist as required by the court. He brought toys, sat by the stroller, stared at sleeping Sophie. But he had nothing to say. Emily was cold and distant. He felt it. Gradually his visits became less frequent. Once every 2 weeks. Then once a month. Then once every 3 months. He found a new girlfriend. Young, compliant. Patricia approved of her immediately. Ryan shifted to a new life and Sophie became an afterthought. He paid child support. Veronica made sure the court handled everything. But he never became a father. Meanwhile, Emily began coming back to life. When Sophie turned 6 months, she returned to work. First part-time remotely. Then full-time. They appreciated her. A year later, she was offered a promotion. Senior manager. She accepted. Emily moved into the house. The very house I had bought for her. She renovated it. Created a nursery for Sophie. Planted flower beds in the garden. Fixed the old fountain in the yard. The house came alive. Filled with laughter, toys, happiness. I visited them often. We sat on the porch, drank tea, watched Sophie learning to walk on the grass. Emily told me about work, about her plans, about how she wanted Sophie to attend a good school. I saw the spark back in her eyes. She wore bright clothes again. She laughed again. She was herself again. And Ryan, we heard about him by accident. 2 years after the divorce. His new marriage fell apart after a year. The woman left, exhausted by his control and jealousy. Patricia, as always, blamed the bride, but the fact remained. Ryan was alone again. Then problems at work began. Financial fraud was uncovered in his father's company. Ryan was involved. Edward, tired of covering for his son, fired him. Publicly. With disgrace. Ryan tried to find another job, but his reputation was ruined. He survived on small projects. Lived off his mother's money. His rental apartments became smaller and cheaper. When Edward died of a heart attack, Ryan came to the funeral. Emily was there too, out of respect for the one person in that family who had ever supported her. Ryan approached her after the ceremony. Older, heavier, with a dead look in his eyes. They stood away from the others. I watched from afar. I ruined everything, I heard him say. Didn't I? Emily looked at him calmly. Without anger. Without resentment. Just calmly. Yes. But I've rebuilt my life. He nodded and stepped away. They never saw each other again. Sophie had just turned 3 when Jason appeared in Emily's life. A coworker. Calm, intelligent, a man who respected her boundaries. He didn't rush her. Didn't pressure her. He was simply there. Emily took her time. She built the relationship slowly, carefully, examining every step. And I could see this man was different. He didn't try to control her. Didn't demand reports. Didn't criticize. He simply loved. One day Emily brought him to the house. Sophie reached for him immediately. He gently picked her up and they went to look at the fountain in the yard. Emily stood on the porch, leaning against the railing and smiled. "Thank you, Mom," she said softly. "For what?" "For the house. For freedom. For not letting me break." I hugged her. "You saved yourself, sweetheart. I just gave you the tools." We stood there, holding each other, watching Sophie laugh as she splashed water from the fountain. There was life. Free. Dignified. And all of it, thanks to one house bought many years ago by a frightened mother who remembered her sister's pain and refused to let her daughter repeat her fate. I often think about all the women who right now are living through what Emily lived through. Women who are controlled, isolated, humiliated, made to believe they're guilty, not good enough, that they must endure for the sake of family, children, the marriage. I want to tell you this. You do not have to endure. Ever. Under any circumstances. Love is not control. Love is not jealousy. Love is not demanding to explain every step. Love is not isolation from friends and family. Love is not criticism of your appearance, your friends, your choices. Love is respect, support, freedom, partnership. And if you don't feel that with the person you live with, you have the right to leave. You always have the right to leave. One house, one apartment, even one room in your name. That's your safety net. Your fortress. Your exit when you need it. I regret nothing. Not the jewelry I sold. Not the car I sold. Not the years of working 2 jobs, the sleepless nights, the saved pennies. All of it was worth it, to see my daughter free. Happy. Alive. And if even one woman listening to this story pauses to think about her life, realizes she deserves more, finds the strength to act, then this story was not told in vain. One day Emily said to me, "Mom, I want Sophie to grow up never ending up where I was. I want her to know from childhood that a woman must always have something of her own. Always have a choice. And that is the best thing we can give our daughters. Not money, not jewelry, not status, but the knowledge that they deserve respect, that they have the right to freedom, that they do not have to endure violence, neither physical nor psychological, that a woman always has a path." Today Emily lives in that same house, raises her daughter, builds her career. She has created a new family, with healthy, respectful relationships. She is happy. Me. I am just a mother who remembered the pain of her sister Danielle, and refused to let her daughter repeat the same destiny. And you know what? One signature on a document once saved Emily's life. And now perhaps this story will save someone else's. If this story touched your heart and you want to help us continue creating stories like this, click this super thanks button, the little heart with a $sign under the video. Every time you do, you help us create stories that inspire and remind people about dignity and the right to a free life. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Tell us in the comments which moment moved you the most. Maybe you have a similar story, or know someone who needs help right now. Share. Sometimes one comment can change someone's life. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss new stories about strength, dignity, and freedom. Give this video a like if you believe every woman deserves a life without fear or control. And before you go, check out the story we left here on the screen. We're sure it will make you think about what truly matters in life. Remember, you do not have to endure. You always have a choice. And sometimes one right step today saves your whole life tomorrow.